Hey folks, we're going to get started in another minute. Really interesting panel. I think people will really enjoy this. We've not done this in the past. I know. I think we're ready to get rolling here. Probably people are grabbing some food and they'll be back in. Again, there's water and coffee available as well. So this talk is going to be real talk with real people, senior living perspectives with Balfour community members. Louise Garrels, who is, one of our famous Boulder people. Director of Marketing and Communication for Balfour, and a long-time friend of the camera. And we're also joined by Dick Strauch. He's a retired NOAA radar engineer, living in assisted living with wife in memory care. Bob Yetz, Marine Corps veteran, retired from Lockheed Martin, living in independent living, not care. And then Kathy Graham's daughter that supported a parent through the senior living selection process. So what we're gonna do is, I have some specific questions that we'll ask up front and ask them all to share their perspectives, and then we'll take more questions from the audience. This will be an hour-long session, so there'll be lots of time for questions, I think, during this one. So Louise can interject anything and answer any questions as well. So the first one is, that we'll ask is, what sparked your journey toward senior living? So why don't we get started with Bob?
About 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in Reno, Nevada. And it's an obvious shock, but a friend of mine who was the director of the Alzheimer's organization in Nevada and Northern California, him and I found this place for me. And Balfour is, it's a savior. It's a wonderful place. It's got everything we need. We got security. We got old people, young people. I happen to be young. Sorry, folks.
Keep that microphone just a hair.
Okay, all right. So that's what brought me here. And this is probably, I can go through my history a little bit, but I don't know, do we want to do that?
You can do.
Say whatever you want.
Is that all right?
You can do whatever you'd like.
Okay. Well,
what sparked your journey towards senior living?
Well, what sparked it was the fact that I knew I was having problems seeing and hearing, and more hearing than not. And I almost had a bicyclist because I had poor seeing, and so it was a decision that my power of attorney and myself find a place for me to go live and be safe. And Balfour goes beyond all of that. It takes care of us. It gives us security, gives us plenty of wonderful food. It's beyond anything I could think of. And it's unbelievable that I can afford it. It is a little on the high side, but it's well worth looking at if you're interested in finding what we got to do.
That's great.
Excellent. Thanks, Bob.
Do you want Dick to go?
Hi. I'm going to talk about the original spark for my looking at senior living. And it was about 20 years ago. This was before dementia. I was living in a house in North Boulder that I thought I could live till they carried me out feet first. But about 20 years ago, my financial advisor suggested I talk to an insurance agent, and she asked, what is my plan for when we can't live in the house any longer? And I said, my plan is to live there till I die. And she said, that's not a plan, that's a pipe dream. So I started to think about them, and so the spark really was this. I didn't want my children to have to figure out, what are we going to do about the old man and the old lady when they can't take care of themselves? So that was the original motivation to start to think. And that was 20 years ago when I was in my 60s. And that was before any onset of dementia.
What sparked it for me is my mother lived with us, and she was falling quite a bit. And we were traveling a lot for work and that kind of thing, and she couldn't get up. So unfortunately, it happened several times that she had fallen and ambulance had to come. She had a life alert. And what you just said really sparked something for me too, because my best friend, that's exactly what her dad said, and that's what he did. And he died in Connecticut, and she lives in Colorado, and that was very traumatic. So that weighed into my decision with my mom too. I wanted to make sure that she was okay.
Thank you. So what were you looking for as it related to the community? And Kathy, you can start.
I'll start since I have it. I wanted a place that my mom felt at home. So it was really, we looked at multiple places. I think we actually studied about 9 places and toured 4 places, and this was pre-COVID. But I walked into different communities. My mom, she was like, I don't want to live in one of those places. This needed to be her home. It needed to feel like home. Some things that mattered to her, she wanted to have her wine at night. She wanted to socialize. She wanted to be active. Her mobility was a problem. She was having a hard time getting around. But I wanted to find a place that could help her with her mobility and make her feel as much as herself as it could. And Balfour did that 100%. What was the question again? I forgot.
Yeah, the question is, what were you looking for as it related to a community that could meet your needs?
I wanted safety. I wanted camaraderie, entertainment that they do very well with. Food, it's excellent. It's 4-star, sometimes 5-star.
Wow.
There are stories, but
I'm going to quote you on that.
so it supplies all of that. It's clean, it's wonderful. We have a tremendous amount of activities that people take us to the variety of activities that's in the neighborhoods and so forth. And it's very, very safe and friendly community. It really is.
Thank you. And how about you, Dick?
Well, originally, I was looking for just a regular senior facility, which had everything that you'd want. That was before the dementia diagnosis, but after that, the dementia diagnosis drove everything. And so before that time, we had actually toured every place in Boulder, particularly those who that offered multiple levels of care. And that was really a primary motivation because, as I said, we didn't want our kids to have to worry about us. But then, so actually then, probably about 2007 or 8 or something like that, we put a down payment and got on a waiting list at a senior care facility here in Boulder, and that was well before the dementia diagnosis.
And I don't know if it was made clear, but Dick, it's your wife that has dementia.
Yes, my wife has
yeah.
dementia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what, this is always one of the best questions, is what advice would you give people here today listening to your presentations?
Well, let me refer to my notes. Everything I've done is, like I said, was due to dementia. Let me direct my answer to your question. First of all, if you're looking at a senior living facility, I would say you want to look at a month's schedule of activities. You want to see how will I fit into this facility, and you can tell that a lot by what activities are offered. If you remember, they look at ads. The ads show somebody playing golf or couples dancing. Well, that was for a facility with a median age of 65. But with the median age of 85, there's no dancing, or very little dancing, and very little playing golf. So that's my first thing I would recommend, is looking at how are you going to fit into this facility. Secondly, I would recommend taking a careful look at your financials, because things are going to get more expensive. Your monthly payments that you're quoted today may not be anything like what they're going to look at after 4 or 5 years of compound expense increases. And that's not just inflation, which we have now. We don't know what that'll be, if it'll go back to what it used to be. But I think a big factor in these facilities now is staff. How do you recruit and maintain staff? And that's an expense that's going to be passed on to you year by year. Then another thing about expenses, I think you might end up being surprised that after you no longer pay for a lot of things that you do because you had a house, you're going to find out that there are 2 items that are going to take more of your financial income than you thought, and that is health care and taxes. You're going to be surprised. Then I would say if you haven't thought about long-term care, you should probably think about it. It may not be for you, but you should think about it. If it's not too late. By too late, I mean if you're too old. And then in regards to COVID, depends on how paranoid you are. If you're living at home in a bubble and trying to protect yourself and limiting who you're seeing and who's coming to see you and where you're going out to see, that's not going to be the case in a facility where you have a number of people living in close proximity and visitors coming in, and especially staff people who are living their own life, and they're younger and they're more active. So if you're paranoid about COVID, think about that.
I just want to interject a little bit about Dick and his wife. They're just a lovely couple, and they are a shining example. They're not the only couple that takes this into consideration, but we just happen to be in a location where we can offer a continuum of care. So, Dick, obviously, of prime concern to him was dementia care, right? As that diagnosis became more evident that they had to deal with, the 2 of them. So they started in our Louisville community, and the memory care facility they wanted is in another building. But then when our Longmont community opened late last year, he figured out that he and his wife Margaret could live in the same building, have meals together, and that was of value. So they just moved to our Longmont community, which is just. I don't know. It's if my parents had to make that decision, I think that's quite wise. You can't always have that kind of service where you can still intermingle even though you're in different levels of care. So I think that's a testament to number one, Dick's love for Margaret. So.
It was, remind me the question, sorry.
Yeah, the question was, what advice would you give to people here today?
A big one that I heard a lot with my own mother and my friends' parents, and frankly, and even the business I do, is I'm not ready for that. So I would say, don't wait till you think you're ready for it. I think in all 3 of these examples, you've heard something that spurred it on was a health issue. Do we ever plan for that? I mean, health issues come up, and if you don't know what you're going to do, it's very panicking. It's a panicking situation. So I would recommend get familiar with the communities around, get familiar, talk to your family. What do you want to do? It's a hard discussion, but I would recommend starting those discussions now. I'm 50, I'm thinking about it. It's like, okay, how do I think about this now?
What advice would you give them?
Start looking.
It's
okay. Start out looking when you have the time. Take the time and take friends with you that may be able to help you make a decision, or loved ones, trusted people. because it's going to be a whirlwind of activities that's going to come your way. And you got to be able to trust the people that are behind you, helping you moving to the next stage. So it's very important that what everybody has said, that it just takes time, and it's better to look at it when you're able to and understand it, and not always rely on somebody.
When did you start looking at it?
7 years ago, I guess.
And when did you move in?
3.5 years ago.
So you spent about 3 years researching.
Yeah.
Interesting. Dick, how about you and Kelly?
Well, as I said, I started thinking about it about 20 years ago, and actually about 15 years ago, I actually made a down payment and got on a wait list of a place here in Boulder that didn't work out eventually. But forget what you ask?
Yeah, just how, when
When did
from
you
the
start?
time you started the process to when
yeah.
you moved in.
Then by the time we moved in, everything was driven by the dementia diagnosis. And that was, I moved in 2018 after having been on the wait list to this other place for 10 years, or more than 10 years. And so we moved in there to Louisville in independent living. And then as the dementia progressed, it was better to move into this new facility in Longmont where the memory care and assisted living and independent living are in the same building. I say I'm living independently in an assisted living facility because the facility is licensed for assisted living. So we can be either independent or assisted.
Thank you. Kelly, how about you?
From when we started thinking about it, I would say it was a topic my mother did not want to have a discussion about, candidly. I asked her about it. When she moved in with us, it was she lived with us for about 5 years. We had an agreement that if her health changed and we couldn't take care of her, she would migrate into a different level of care. When that time came, she was not okay with it, candidly. So my husband and I had about a year there where we were trying to talk to her about it, but it was a very difficult discussion. And unfortunately, it progressed to a point that her health, she got hospitalized and she got so sick, it wasn't a choice anymore.
I just want to add to that. I mean, I've gone through this journey myself. Personally, years ago, I tried to convince my folks to move into a community because I thought it would be safer. They were in California. I'm here in Colorado. What do you do? And there was quite a bit of denial. They were in a 55-plus community, which was lovely, but it didn't take the worry away from me. So, long story short, it ended up being something catastrophic that had my mom finally, my dad had passed, and my mom was by herself in a 55 community, and it was a catastrophic event that forced us to have to move her into a facility. And it's not ideal, and I empathize with any of you that are having to contend with this. It's a very, very difficult strain on your relationships with your families, your kids, and whatnot. So if you ever need to talk to people, please reach out to whoever you can. Any of our leasing counselors at Balfour are there to really counsel. That's why they're called counselors. And I've talked to many of them to try to help understand how to get my head around the fact that my mom wouldn't go, and then she had to go, and then to contend with the hospice care that ensued not too long after that. So these are tough conversations. They are not for the faint of heart. Getting old is not easy, but please lean on whoever you can to help you.
And I want to just build on that for a second, because while I mentioned that it was a health issue and my mother was hospitalized and we moved her into assisted living, I would say for the first 3 months, she was very angry with me. But I think she evolved. It was so interesting to see her grow. She actually really started to bond with people that were there. I think Balfour really saw that she wanted to be kept busy, and she wasn't really into, I want to do all these activities, although she did love bingo. But she became the president of a resident council. I think they created the resident council because my mom was like, I have all these opinions and something needs to be done. And, she wanted to she had opinions on the food committee, so they created a food committee, and that's exactly what my mom needed. Watching them grow together and watching her grow, I went, thank you, God, because she became very happy, much happier than she was when she lived with me.
We love Judy. She was a gem. We just really
a pip.
do.
That's great reflection.
Do you want to take questions now, or do you want to wait till the end?
We're gonna start on questions in a minute.
Okay.
Luis, why don't you tell us a little bit about the differences, the changes that you've seen in this industry and in Balfour over the last 4, 5, 6 years?
Okay. I would say, first of all, everybody's heard about the gray wave and the silver wave, right? It's coming, particularly hard and fast. There's a large number of people that are going to be in need of senior living, and so there's there was a pretty big boom in trying to build, and then COVID happened, right? So COVID has thrown a wrench into just about everything in our lives, right? From supply chain shortages to, staffing shortages and whatever you want to talk about. So I think we're still on uneven ground to understand what we can and we cannot do because of COVID. This pandemic has really thrown us for a loop. Operationally, it's difficult, but we're still building new communities, and we're doing it very slowly, very methodically. Our CEO, Michael Schonbrun, who's been in this community, Balfour's been in existence since 1997, and we're not the kind of community or senior living community that's going to grow fast. As you've seen, here we are. We've been here for 22 plus years, and we've got 10. So we're not about mass producing, and I think in hindsight 2020, that's probably a wise thing for us to do, because every time we open a community, we kind of pivot and we accommodate what's going on. We opened Longmont, our newest community, during the pandemic. Go figure, right? We're all scared to death. We talk about being like paranoid, living in a bubble, and who wants to go live in a congregate living situation? But which had been devastating for a lot of senior living communities. People were very afraid. But Bob's not scary. He did just fine during the pandemic. Dick did great. Judy was great.
I felt good because I still had to travel for my job, and I felt like my mom was safe, and there were safe ways we could visit her.
Yeah. So the industry itself is going to continue to grow. People have said, Balfour is so expensive. Well, yeah, we are. We are a little bit expensive, but we're on the higher side, but the value you get is very different. And the way I look at it is that we are really pushing the industry hard to raise the level of what can be expected in a senior living community. As you've been watching these slideshows going, there's a dog. Yes, we allow dogs in our communities, right? There's no limitation to that. There's no beige on the wall. You're not going to see beige and pastels in our communities because I've heard Michael Schonbrun refer to it as we're not the waiting room at the pearly gates. We're not, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not what we're about. We're about providing you a vibrant, wonderful, whatever length of time you're with us. Have it be your best years of your life with us, and we go out of our way to do that. So this is part of Longmont right here. We don't try to cookie cut. You'll never see two communities that look the same. Ever. We do our own interior designs in-house. There's just an amazing way that I don't know how they do what they do, but each community is beautiful. You feel like you're in a hotel, right, Dick? Yeah.
I was going to say that we moved into Longmont the day it opened on December 16th last year, December 16th, 2020. And when we moved there, was just before Christmas. And I was the only person on the third floor of the building for about 3 weeks. And we were in quarantine, but it didn't make much sense to quarantine when there was nobody else around. So, and the other thing, my wife was having some problems adjusting, and they wanted me to go down and try to help things out. So
Well,
I
that's
learned a lot about dementia by experience.
That's all fascinating. Louise, could you tell us a little bit about the demographics? Like what are the average ages, men, women?
They're older, Al.
No, I get that.
The average age, what do you, so we have, I just want to introduce a couple people that are here in the audience today. Julie Nash is the executive director for our Longmont community. Julie, what's the average age you think in your building right now?
Median.
Median age? 80s? Yeah, early 80s. Yep, and what would you say, because Louisville's a little bit bigger, it's a larger campus. Carrie, what would you say for the campus?
I would say for our independent living, it's late 70s.
Late 70s for independent living.
And then for our assisted living communities and memory care, it's in the mid-80s.
Yeah, then you go up to mid-80s for memory care and assisted living.
Terrific. Questions from the audience? Got time.
Just
Everybody up there, thank you so much for your input. Dick, you mentioned that you made a deposit on a unit and then that didn't work out. What happened? And second question is, do these buildings allow dogs?
Yes, they do allow dogs. I can answer that. I don't have one, but I have a cat. Yeah, I made a deposit in about 2007, and then in the summer of 18, which is 10 years on their wait list, so I was at the top of the wait list, obviously. I decided it was time to make a move because of dementia had progressed. And I was taken aback a little bit by the upfront cost. And then I started looking somewhere out of Boulder. I really wanted to stay in Boulder, but then after that didn't work out, I started looking at other places. And very soon, within 2 months, I was moved into Balfour and Louisville.
Other questions? Questions? Oh, we have one here.
Just a question that you said your mother was living in California and then you were here in Colorado. Did she end up moving out here in Colorado or she stayed and got her care there?
She was one of the stubbornest, I'm going to say, Japanese American women I have ever known, and she was not going to move to the snow. Just wasn't going to happen. We were not in a position to move back there. She didn't. I mean, she needed to be in a memory care community, and so we found her a place for her to stay there. And she, again, kicking and screaming. At one point, it really didn't matter because she didn't understand what was going on, which was really harder on probably me than it was on her. But yeah, she stayed in California.
Yeah, that just gets back to the point of planning, you know, instead of waiting. I mean, you're in a different situation where she didn't want to go, but if you plan, these people, your family and loved ones, will move to be closer instead of waiting till something.
Yeah, I mean, we selected the guests that we wanted you to hear from today based on their diversity of experiences with and why, you know, the different reasons why they needed to look at senior living. And so we're not doing this to pump Balfour. We're here to pump just you getting educated. Get yourself educated about senior services, senior, living communities. We really want you to feel like you're empowered when you make a decision, and that you explore all the different scenarios that could possibly happen.
I just want to add to that as well, just talking about moving from out of state. I would say that of all of our residents in Louisville and in Longmont as well, probably about 30% have moved to this area to be near their adult child or loved one. So with the planning and having that conversation, making that move is a little bit easier, but also to educate them that they will be surrounded by other people that have moved from out of state too. Which can also be a really great bonding experience. But it's more important for them to be near their loved one for some of these families, for a lot of these families, than to stay where they are at currently, unless you're Luis's mom who's super stubborn and doesn't want to leave the beach. But that's just something to keep in mind. We see it all the time.
I've got a question too, is, it happens even in your 60s and then, definitely progressed in your 70s and 80s, where you lose track, you lose relationships, you don't have as much outside connection. Now, the two of you, Dick and Bob, have you developed new friendships and new relationships being in those buildings with so many people?
Oh yes, they're very nice people. The staff is unbelievably good. I have breakfast every day with about 6 or 7 people that I would exchange a lot of pleasantries with, and I have dinner and lunch with my wife in the other dining room. There's a separate dining room for the assisted living and independent living and memory care. And so I have lunch and dinner with my wife in memory care. And I know almost all of the people in memory care.
That's awesome. Bob?
Like I said earlier, I was probably the youngest man at the facility 3.5 years ago. I probably still am. But it's a very wonderful place to be, because I thought it was younger, I wasn't going to be accepted, older people, all that other stuff that goes along with that, imagination. And none of it came out to be right. Everybody accepted me. I did tell them that I was an alcoholic from high school and lived in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we know what that was like. And I spent a little tour over in Vietnam. And everybody was just unbelievably welcoming. I can't say enough about them. They just opened their arms, and it was perfect. I love it for that.
Kelly, you want to reflect on that at all?
Yeah, actually, I would say one of my mom's best friends she found at Lavender Farms. And, she definitely was very fond of the staff, too. She adopted everybody, I think.
It's awesome.
There's something that we do at Balfour, and it's sneaky, but it's really all in the name of health and wellness. So our interior design team, in addition to being very well qualified interior designers and architects, they are also studying the science behind what makes your senior living experience ideal, so that you can live your best life. And that's what they do. The Longmont community alone has between 600 and 700 pieces of artwork on the walls. Not random, and you'll see, well, some of them are on here, but some of they are purposeful. Each and every piece is curated to enrich the lives of the people that walk those halls. This is Dick's home in Longmont, right? Or Bob's home at the lodge. And those things are meant to conjure emotion, not bad ones, good ones. And it's amazing how much those pieces can bring people together, because there's a commonality and understanding, or explaining what this is to one person as it is to another. The Longmont, okay, is anyone here a fan of the Buffs besides me and Dick? And Al. There's a little wing upstairs at Longmont that features the CU marching band. They've got a winning season every season, right? So, those kinds of things bring people together. Like, oh, you're a CU fan, and so they're not put there just as kitschy things. They're there to actually, again, enrich in the lives of each and every person that experiences it, whether it's a resident or a family member. So.
I have a couple of questions, actually. One is, you talk about Balfour and Louisville being expensive. Could you give a price range from studio to 2-bedroom?
So you're going to have to say it a little bit louder, because I didn't quite hear you.
You talked about being expensive. Could you give a price range what you consider expensive, going like what a studio would be compared to a two-bedroom?
You're looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, I think we're at $5,000 per month to up to 12, depending on the level of care that's needed.
Okay. And the next question is, do you have a waiting list for Louisville?
What level of care? So let me explain to you about Louisville. Louisville has independent living.
Yes.
There's no waiting list. And we have assisted living. I don't believe there's a waiting list there either. And then memory care is getting pretty full, but I don't think there is. So, and then skilled nursing is a temporary kind of a thing. So that Louisville campus has like sort of a whole continuum. And some people are moving from one level of care to the other, and sometimes back. So
you say there's no waiting list. So if you wanted to put your name on a list now, but you haven't cleaned out your house yet, it's going to take you 2 years to do that. Would that be acceptable, or do you just wait the 2 years?
You would probably just wait until you're ready to move, because the I guess the assortment of types of apartment homes that are going to be available will vary depending on when you decide you want to move in. So there probably is a wait list for, is Carrie still in the building here? There may be a wait list on 2-bedroom. Our 2 bedrooms are, I mean, there's always, they go so fast. So I don't think Julie has any 2 bedrooms available in Longmont right now. So it depends. It really depends on the care level that you want and the type of apartment that you want. Our cottages, we have an interesting 8 little cottages that are part of our Louisville community. They are 1,500 square foot homes with 2 bedrooms each, and a kitchen and a washer dryer and a 1-car garage, covered garage. Those have been known to be going on to waiting lists as well.
Louise, would you recommend that people that are interested potentially come and check it out now?
Oh, absolutely.
And
yeah,
maybe get
no.
familiar with it.
It doesn't cost you anything to take a tour.
Yeah, I would just, as a, thinking of my mom and my own situation, I would recommend get familiar with the communities now and go see how they feel. And even if you're not thinking about it now, I'm looking at them all now. I'm like, I want to, and I like to know what they're like. I would recommend go tour them now.
Yeah, we're fully transparent. If you want to come take a class, we'll get you to take a class and interact with, go take yoga with Bob, right, Bob? Yep. And if you want to have dinner with Dick, come in the dining room at well, depending on what the restrictions are for COVID. But yeah, please, we have a fabulous dining staff for all of our communities. It's kind of a best kept secret. But come have a meal. Come try out our salons. We have salons in every single building. I mean, Longmont does not have a swimming pool, but the Louisville campus has 2, and there's saltwater pools. So yeah, and I think at one point you might have seen the water aerobics class that was taking place at the lodge. So yeah, there's lots to check out.
So different retirement communities have different financial models. Some like Fraser and others, there's a big buy-in fee initially, and some like Balfour, it's all by month. And I guess you have to make a kind of hard decision about, because if you pay a big chunk up front, then I guess there's some guarantees that you're not going to be thrown out if you run out of money. And if you're paying $8,000 or $12,000 per month, when you run out of money, at a very old age, you might end up having to move someplace you don't want to move. I guess one question might be, how do you make the purely financial decision about whether you're going to choose a place where there's a big upfront cost but some later guarantees versus a place by month? And then from Balfour's perspective, why did you choose to go with the monthly model?
I think Dick can answer that very well.
Well, I'm not sure I can answer, but I give you some insight. If you have to pay a large sum up front, let's say $500,000, and you get half of it back, or your estate gets half back when you depart, you don't know how long you're going to live there. So you have to take that half that you didn't get back, the $250,000, divide that by the number of months that you're going to be there, which is unknown, and then add that to your monthly expense. That was tough math for me.
And we were looking at that too. My mother-in-law went into a community that worked a lot like that buy-in model you're talking about, which for me as a daughter, I thought I wanted that. But when I started looking at the communities and how they worked, I decided to live for the moment with my mom and just say, I want her to go to the place that feels best. We'll figure out the money side of things, and it ended up not being an issue. But do you have anything?
It's a very individual decision financially of what you're comfortable with. My parents moved into a buy-in community because in the Midwest, that's what the options are. As an employee, this is the first time that I've worked for a community that has a buy-in, and one of the things that I like as we're going through COVID, when my parents are upset with housekeeping or culinary, it's going to be a difficult decision for them to move out because they've invested almost $1 million. Where I feel as an executive director at Balfour, every day we have to work for the loyalty of our residents and ensure that the services that we provide meet or exceed their expectations. So I think that's something that's also important to consider as you're considering what financial structure is important to you, that if something changes with the ownership or the staffing levels or the clinical capabilities of a community, are you prepared to walk away from that investment if it's no longer meeting your needs?
Great point.
I think it's also worth it. Dick mentioned it, but long-term care insurance is something definitely well worth it if you're concerned about, especially health care and medical care. Long-term care insurance could certainly. My parents did not have long-term care insurance, and so it made the decision. You know, when my mother was needing 24 hours care, that's an expensive proposition to do in your home. I think at the point when we were looking at it, it was twice as expensive as moving into a memory care community. So,
Just one thing, and I don't know if I wish it'd come back, but before COVID, there used to be, I don't know the name of it, but you could visit like 10 communities in the fall on a Saturday.
Yes, the
It's boom,
tour.
boom. I'm hoping that comes back because I did that. I mean, you're in your car, you're hustling, but it's a really good opportunity to bang out a whole Saturday and get 10 communities or less in. Everybody's helpful, they'll walk you through. So I'm hoping that comes back and helps people in this group, because that's what I did.
yeah,
on
I mean,
Saturday.
it's, you know, if you ever, you can do that even when the tour's not happening. You can just schedule time to come into Balfour, any of the Balfour communities. So.
I think that's all the questions. I just want to thank
you wanna
this
add?
wonderful panel. Anybody who wants to add anything, please do. But I want to thank this wonderful panel for taking the time to share their experiences. They were really personal and interesting and incredibly helpful. You know, I'm in my mid-60s and I'm thinking, hey, now's the time. Like you had mentioned, Dick. You know, start early and start thinking about what you might want to do. Because I was a little surprised even at the average age was that old. So there's a lot of people in their 60s that need to start thinking about that now.
You
So
got 15 years out.
I know. Don't remind me.
Yeah, and just, you know, feel free to, we'll stick around for a few minutes. Feel free to talk to us. Feel free to talk to, make sure you go into the Expo too. There's an amazing array of services and other vendors to talk to as well. So
let's thank our group very much. Balfour, great presentation. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. And we'll get this broken down and be ready for the next session in probably about 5 minutes.